Hey, I'm here. I do have my visual aid, as you can see, and I have an audience member behind the camera. Say hello.
Hey.
So now I will start my speech. Hi, my name is India McCoy, and I will be discussing today understanding codependency, what it means, and why it must be addressed. So how many of you have ever heard the term codependency? And how many of you know what it means? It has been estimated that over 9 out of 10 every American does show signs of a codependent behavior. So think about this. If we're standing in a room and there are 10 of us, at least 9 are codependent, or possibly 10. So codependency is an issue that is very personal to me. In 2014, our family did go through a horrific event, and it actually eventually led for us to pursue help through a local church. We began attending support groups and several classes, and I learned the meaning of codependency in these classes, and I realized that I too was codependent. So I've researched many articles on codependency, I have read many books on codependency, and now I actually lead groups that focus on codependent behaviors. So I would like to share with you what I've learned about codependency. More specifically, I would like for you to understand that codependency is more serious than you think. It is a compulsive behavior that can feel like the life is being sucked out of you. So what is codependency? Codependency is a type of disorder that was recognized years ago in relationships between alcoholics and those close to them. Studies of these individuals showed many similar traits such as anger, anxiety, and depression. I'll go through more of these later, but for now, let's talk about the actual definition of codependency. Well, there's actually no clear-cut definition of codependency. There are many different versions of the definition, and according to one author, the general consensus of codependency is an excessive reliance on other people for approval and identity. So when you hear the word excessive, what comes to mind? I think of things such as obsessive, compulsive, and overbearing. Which leads me to my definition of codependent. My definition of a codependent person is a person who actually focuses all of their time and energy on another individual, and they're always trying to fix them. So the other person is actually usually struggling with other things. It can be anything from gambling to addiction to alcoholism. It could even be something as simple as anger. And an interpersonal relationship with someone with these type of behaviors, a codependent may sacrifice his or her own needs in order to overcompensate for the dysfunctional needs of the other individual. So even though there is no clear-cut definition of codependency, the characteristics used to describe codependent are actually the same. So there's a popular book, and it's called Codependent No More. If you actually have not read this book, I'm going to throw this out there. I think that it is a fantastic read. There is actually a sequel to it, so you should check it out if you do have interest in codependency. But the author of this book, she tells you different characteristics. See if any of these sound familiar to you. Codependents will blame themselves for the actions of the other people and their well-being. They feel anxiety, pity, and guilt when other people have a problem, and they may feel just an overbearing need to fix that problem for the other individuals. And they may feel bored or of little value if there is no problem to solve. And a codependent always thinks that they know best. I can tell you from my personal experience, that defined me to a T. I thought that I always knew what was best. So these are just some of the traits of codependency. Now, not all of these are in every codependent. So hear me when I tell you this. There are low-level and high-level degrees of codependency. So In one military article, there is an author that tells us that by understanding these defining traits, we can begin to tell the difference between low-level behavior and high-level behavior in codependence. So an example of the low-level behavior that this author defines is just simply trying to cheer up a distraught colleague. And the high-level behavior that this author recognizes would be a spouse changing their behavior to support the dysfunction of an alcoholic. So as you can see, not all of these behaviors would merit a serious problem, but for those with a high level of codependency, denial could be a serious issue. So to first overcome codependency, these individuals must know and understand when the issue began and how to handle it. So let's talk about how to overcome codependency. So how many of you remember your childhood? Like, did you live in a nice home with good parents? Many people will claim that they were raised well, but the reality is most children are raised in a home with some sort of a dysfunction. So which dysfunction causes codependency? Believe it or not, codependency is a common relationship model, and it usually does begin at childhood. Were you taught to respect your parents, to not interrupt them during conversations, and to even stay quiet? Well, I was. However, I never saw it as a problem. Consider this quote from a well-respected article. Children who are taught that their feelings do not matter will learn to live through other people's feelings. Now, based on what I've already told you, does this sound like codependency to you? The answer is yes, but the good news is there is a way to conquer codependency. So how does a person overcome codependency? And there are actually many different ways that we can approach this, but the bottom line is it all boils down to what you are comfortable with. So let's explore some of these options, shall we? So the first option is going to be the most obvious, and that's going to be to seek counseling. An extrovert may find that it is easier to open up if they just have with their thoughts and their feelings, if it's just with only one other person. There are going to be many different types of counselors to choose between. You can seek help from a behavioral facility, a private professional, or if a more traditional approach. If you have strong beliefs, religious values, it may be important to seek a counselor with the same beliefs as you. For a believer in Jesus, Christian counseling through a church may be the best option. The second option to begin overcoming codependency is small groups. These are designed to work through various issues in life, and for some, being among a small group of people with similar struggles can be an easier way to open up. You know, you're going to hear some of these things that they're talking about, and you're going to find that you're actually very relatable to these other individuals. For those of you who have not heard of Al-Anon, it's actually a small group that was originally created for a loved one of an addict, and this is actually a perfect example of a small group setting. So there are actually now other groups that are addressing some of these issues. For example, one of the groups that I lead is Loved One of an Addict, and there are some other groups that are as general as just life issues. The last option, in my opinion, very dear to my heart, is the best way to truly deal with any feelings associated with codependency. This is going to be by committing to a 12-step program. The author of Codependent No More, she actually endorses this, the 12-step program. She writes, some individuals do find it easier to step out of denial through the encouragement of other group members. And as I said, I can personally testify to this. I have completed a 12-step program within Celebrate Recovery. The step study actually taught me how to focus on myself and how to focus on God. And concepts such as these are very important to help a person overcome codependency. And I would like to point out right now, I'm actually also co-leading one of these step studies right now. So I'm very pleased that I can help individuals with their various struggles. So now that I have shared facts about codependency with you, I would like to ask you, Have your thoughts on codependency changed any? So let's revisit the ideas that I would like for you to take away from this speech. Codependency is more serious than you think. It's a compulsive behavior that can cause you to just feel drained. And as we've discussed, codependency starts as early as childhood. The many dysfunctional behaviors of a codependent can cause a true need to seek out help. Thankfully, there are several options to choose between, regardless of personal preference. So the next time you find yourself feeling depressed because you can't cheer someone up, getting angry due to the actions of a drinking spouse, or feeling anxiety to help fix another person's problems, ask yourself a question. Am I over-investing in others? If you answered yes, remember, over 90% of Americans are codependent on some level.